The Lake Erie Grape Discovery Center is the official visitors center for the New York State Lake Erie Concord Grape Belt Heritage Area. Supporting and promoting the grape industry, visit us and learn about grape growing history in the Lake Erie region. Shop for grapey gifts, taste local wine in a Concord vineyard. Westfield Memorial Hospital provides high-quality health care to residents of Western New York, offering patients the most sophisticated medical advancements while keeping the ease and familiarity of a community hospital. Support for Chautauqua Sunrise has been provided by WRFA 107.9 FM, Jamestown's public radio station, streaming online 24/7 at WRFALP.com. Low power to the people. Funding is provided by a grant from New York State Senator Catherine M. Young, representing Western New York's 57th District with a local office in Olean. Chautauqua Sunrise is made possible by a grant from Fredonia Place, a continuing care retirement community providing dignity in a modern luxury environment. Meter's Restaurant, a family tradition for over 50 years in downtown Ripley, is a proud supporter of Chautauqua Sunrise. Meter's provides all-day dining, banquet services, and custom catering, specializing in pie. From the Access Channel 5 studios in Mayville, it's Chautauqua Sunrise. Chautauqua Sunrise is hosted by Doc Hamels and supported by the award-winning volunteers at Access Channel 5. Continuing the traditions of Senior Report, we are here to share local news, colorful interviews, and events of interest to everyone. Chautauqua Sunrise is broadcast live Saturday mornings each week, countywide, from 9 to 10 a.m. Join us by calling in live, emailing us, or checking out our social media. And now, from the Channel 5 studios, it's Chautauqua Sunrise.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Randy Burt. I'm sitting in for Doc today. Doc's out again. This time, might be a little farther than before. I think he's out of this world, but I think we'll find out in just a little while there. This morning on the way to the studio was the most beautiful sunrise I have ever seen. We had to stop down at the train station in Mayville and took a lot of pictures. Got up here to the studio, and out back of we have a old bus garage. Was a really awesome rainbow. I mean, what a perfect morning here in Chautauqua County. So I've got a fantastic show today. We'll talk in just a few minutes about it, but I brought a guest back that we didn't get very far last time, and it's been like 170 shows since I had this guest on, which is way, way, way too long. So sit right back. But before I give the morning announcements, I want to congratulate another couple hours. A friend of mine, Levi Swanson, and Carrie Peterson are tying the knot down in Fauquier. Levi is a friend of mine, and I'm still waiting for him to tell his future father-in-law he's getting married today. So I don't know if he knows yet or not. So we're going to start right out with the announcements. Pulse Poetry Slam, calling out poets and poetry lovers. The Infinity Visual and Performing Arts Center will be hosting Pulse Poetry Slam open mic. Okay, Doc, that is hard. Night on Thursday, November 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Infinity Arts Cafe. Poets and audience members are welcome. This month's event features slam poet Odd Rod. I love these names they come up with, the poets. Autumn Echo, she's been on the show a couple times. I think she's the organizer of all this. Since 2011, he's toured over 350 colleges and earned many awards, including 2014 and 2016 APCA Spokesword Artist of the Year. I'm not sure what it is, but it sounds pretty impressive. Paul's Poetry Slam events are free, family-friendly, and open to the public. Performance poetry is an excellent way to express creativity while practicing performance and public speaking. You can get a hold of Infinity at area code 716-664-0991 or www.infinityperformingarts.org. Magazines and Munchies program returns with the Girl Scouts. The holidays are fast approaching, and local Girl Scouts have just the right treat. Girl Scouts across Western New York will increase their financial literacy, which I can't say, and use digital platforms to engage customers to purchase candy and nut products along with magazines, September 30th through October 28th. So this is just about over. The community can support a local Girl Scout when they stock up on popular items like dark chocolate mint penguins. I don't think I ever had one of those. Dulce de leche owls. English butter toffee. I guess I haven't had them because I can't pronounce them. Peanut butter bears, dark chocolate caramel caps, and sea salt chocolate covered raisins. Fruit slices, and new items like dill pickle peanuts. Oh man, I can't wait for one of them. Salt and pepper cashew habs, now that sounds good, and more. A list of items can be found on the website www.gswny.org. For a non-edible treat, Girl Scouts offer over 1,000 magazine subscriptions. This is an easy way to purchase new titles or renew your favorite magazines, all while supporting local Girl Scouts. Girls are able to use digital database to track their orders and send out electronic emails to the customers. This Friends and Family program teaches girls 5 essential skills: goal setting, decision making, money management, people skills, and business ethics. Girls also learn the benefits of working together as a team, as well as earning money to support their activities through the year. The next one is Rolling Hills Radio. They're starting their 8th season October 30th at 6:30 at Shawbucks in Jamestown, New York. The show features Austin Walken Kane and Bess Greenberg. If you've never heard Rolling Hills Radio, we got to see them at Chautauqua at the end of the summer, and Ken Hartley does a fantastic job. You'll really enjoy it. Rolling Hills Radio is now performed live and recorded on the last Monday of each month at Shawbucks, located at 212 West 2nd Street in Jamestown, in the heart of the entertainment district and nestled between the National Comedy Center and the Ice Arena. There's plenty of free parking immediately adjacent to the venue. Also new this season, Rolling Hills is partnering with Chautauqua County Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber will manage ticket sales and finances for RHR. As always, Rolling Hills Radio is recorded for radio. In the works, beginning with the season's first show, multi-camera video recordings of each of the season's 9 programs will also be produced for airing on public access TV stations in a variety of localities, giving Rolling Hills Radio even a wider audience potential. Video recording also holds the possibility of bringing greater attention to Jamestown in the arts hotspot. Doors will open at 5:30 for happy rolling hour. Recording of each of the 9 shows begins at 6:30. A long-standing Rolling Hills tradition remains unchanged. Immediately after the show, there will be a meet and greet at Shawbucks, offering the audience the opportunity to meet personally with performers, take selfies, get autographs, and if they so inclined, buy an album. Season tickets are available. Get a hold of the Chamber, www.chaubc.org. chautauquachamber.org. Season tickets, which include admission to all 9 regular season shows, are $120. Tickets available for single shows are $15. 7th Annual Emporium Community Helping Hands, 7th Annual Emporium Indoor Craft Show, Flea Market, and Rummage Sale event, Monday, November 4th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. The Gateway Center is at 31 Water Street off Foot Avenue, featuring arts and craft vendors, food, antiques, basket auction, local gift certificates, and early Christmas shopping. For more information, call 487-1148. You can go on to chhny.org, facebook.com. November marks Mayville Tuesday Club hiatus. I knew I was going to have trouble with that word. The November meeting will mark the beginning of hiatus for the Mayville Tuesday Club members as they cuddle up with winter while they look forward to beginning once again in April. They are reminded to bring Blue Star Mothers items to send to servicemen for Christmas. Taking members on a trip across the ocean during upcoming get-together starting at 1:30 on November 7th will be Kathleen Kennedy, a Tuesday Club member. She will tell about her trip to Spain and Portugal while showing photos of these countries. Another note here from the Girl Scouts of Western New York are proud to announce the celebration of a long-cherished Girl Scouts of Western New York building, the Jamestown Service Center. The entire community is invited on Saturday, November 11th at 2661 Horton Hill Road, Jamestown. The format program begins at 11 a.m. Interactive exhibits last until 3 p.m. Volunteers, staff, friends, and guests will celebrate the 25th anniversary of the construction of the beautiful Girl Scout Center in Jamestown. A fun-filled day will include the unveiling of a time capsule, a display of Girl Scout uniforms throughout the decades, special presentation of Girl Scouting in the community, yesterday, today, tomorrow, samples of the original Girl Scout cookie, camping and outdoor program highlights, songs and ceremonies, and more. All attendees will receive a special anniversary patch. For more information, please RSVP to Geraldine Hickey, 935-6047, or JERILYN.HICKEY.GSWNY.org. The Ripley Rod and Gun Events is hosting an air rifle match mid-October and November 5th, weather permitting, starting at 9 a.m. Also, there is a fall turkey shoot on the 5th and 12th, starting at noon. For more information, Facebook Ripley Rod and Gun. And our last announcement, Youth POP, Power of Potential event, Thursday, November 16th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Reg Lene Center for the Arts. Featuring presentations from the Power of Youth Advocacy by Dover Youth 2. Youth POP video presentation by Hope Chautauqua. Youth Empowerment Program CASAC Awareness Theater by Cranky Plate Productions. Selfie Station and Refreshments. For more information, 664-3608, or you can go on to hopechautauqua.org or facebook.com Hope Chautauqua. We're going to take a PSA at this time, and we'll be right back to start our show.
I am a veteran. My victory was finding the strength to be a champion.
My victory is having a job I can be proud of.
At DAV, we help veterans get the benefits they've earned.
My victory was finishing my education.
My victory was getting help to put our lives back together.
DAV provides veterans with a lifetime of support.
My victory is being there for my family.
Help us support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
And we're back now. I just want to wish everybody a happy Halloween. I'm told it's Tuesday, I think. So Tuesday, get that candy out and you'll have all the little munchkins coming to your house. I also like to say that we're live, or we're recorded. We'll be playing on WRFA radio, low power to the people, in Jamestown, New York at 1 o'clock on Tuesdays. Okay, now it's the start of our show. We might get a call from Doc Hamels, but right now I'd like to welcome my guest, Sam Genco. Sam's been on the show like 170 shows ago, so Sam, as you can see, I'm getting all tongue-tied. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Randy.
Now, Sam,
Nice to be here.
you're a local man,
Yeah, I live in Jamestown, have for a long, long time.
long time,
Yep.
and you have a lot of hobbies, and today you're our history buff. Now, I've seen you in the papers, on Facebook. You do a lot of public speaking, and we're going to start out today with one of your really enjoyable hobbies that you're really into now. We're going to talk about Alonso Sampson. So I'm just going to sit back, and who is Alonso Sampson?
Well, Alonso Sampson was a Cattaraugus County native. He was born there in 1831, and he lived about half of his life in Cattaraugus County, not too far south of Springville, just a little north of West Valley in what they call the town of Ashford. And the way I found out about him was that I purchased a book, a box of books at an auction, and in that box was, it was this book right here.
Yeah, that book there.
And it's called 3 Times Around the World, The Life and Adventures of Alonso Sampson. Yeah, 1867 it was published, yeah. And it's an extremely rare book, I found out. There's some in museums and libraries, but other than that, that's about it. There's a few in private hands.
And this is oops, we just lost the cover. Jeff, can you put that picture back up there?
Yeah, that's the title page from the book. And like I said, it was 1867 when it was published. He started his life by, when he left home, he was only somewhere between 15 and 17, and he went to fight in the war with Mexico. And he enjoyed the trip that he had to take by sailing ship from New York down to Veracruz in Mexico. And so after the war, he decided he might want to try whaling. So he signed up for actually several different voyages. Whaling voyages were not a quick affair. They could last sometimes for years. So when his first whaling voyage, it was basically in the Atlantic, and the first thing that he talks about in the book is how they were all called on deck when they first got away from land. The captain said, if you do everything I tell you to do, we won't have a problem. If you don't do what I tell you to do, you're going to get punished, and the punishments could be severe, whipping and all sorts of not very fun things. And they had, the Greenhorns had about a week to learn the names of all the rigging and all the sails and all the terminology. And if they didn't get proficient with that, they would not get rest, basically. They couldn't go off duty, and they had to continue working until they learned all the various jobs they had to do and the terminology that they had to understand. So right away he was introduced to a rather difficult life, and the whaling life was not for the meek, and it was always, you were always subject to quick death. Unfortunately, he also talks about being up in the rigging with another sailor, and he heard a splash, he turned and looked, and the guy was gone. And this was not a real uncommon situation. They had to face all sorts of adversity. And the amazing thing to me was that they would do it for little money, and basically the first voyage, they were always told the first voyage you're just basically getting used to what goes on, and don't expect to make any money on the first voyage, because they got paid according to how much whale oil they brought into port. And sometimes it was a very bad voyage and they would make nothing, basically. Other times, if it went well, they might make a little bit of money. But in his book he says that people were always after the sailors when they came into port, and a lot of times they would wind up basically taking all their money on wine, women, and song, or they would owe money to the owners for their clothing and things of that nature. Jeez. So they might come into port, get some money, and then turn right around and spend it, and they'd have to go back out on another voyage in order to support themselves. So it was a hard life, and he did this several times. And on one voyage, they went into the Pacific. Well, actually on a number of voyages. They went into the Pacific. First they went in the Atlantic, then they went into the Pacific, and from there they would go sometimes to the Sea of Japan, and then they'd go north into the Arctic Ocean and run along maybe the coast of Russia. They really went all over the world, literally, and they would chase the whales wherever the whales were.
I'm not sure, Sam, but was there, I'm not sure if it's in the book, but was there a lot of competition, fighting back and forth with each other?
Well, they actually helped each other. They, wherever the whales were, that's where the whaling ships would go, and they would often kind of work in packs. I'm sure there was a healthy competition, but incidents of treachery between crews was something I didn't really read much about at all. They actually would get together, and they had something called a GAM, G-A-M, where they would get together, go on one ship, or maybe go on shore if they were near land, and they would have a dance. Maybe one of the sailors had a violin or something. They'd have a little get together and just sort of enjoy each other's company.
Hey, Sam, we got a phone call here. I'll put you on hold for a minute. So I think it's a long distance. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, speaker.
Speaker?
This is Doc Hamels.
I've heard of you before.
Yeah?
Yeah, somewhere I've heard of you. Boy, Doc, you missed an awesome sunrise this morning.
The Chautauqua sunrise?
Oh, this was awesome. I mean, the show's awesome, but we actually had a sunrise before the rain started. Not sure if it's still raining.
Awesome because of your guest that was there.
Oh, yeah, man, we're having a ball. So where are you at?
Where do you think I am?
I think I heard you had a picture of you, so this is where I think you are right now. Yep, I knew it. You're up in outer space. I knew you were going to be a long ways away.
My granddaughter, I didn't have you there, Grandy, to take my picture, so I had to draft my granddaughter, Kyla Hamels, to take my photo.
Is this before you took off, then? So how is everything in space?
It's just as nice as it is in sunny Florida.
Oh. How's Florida doing after the hurricanes?
Well, it's interesting down here. You don't really realize it until you look a little closer, and then you'll see the tops of palm trees are cracked off, signs are kind of half hanging. But for the most part, where I'm at, it doesn't look like too much damage. Some fences were down and things like that, but not bad.
Great. So what are you up
So what
to?
are you guys talking about this morning?
We are starting out, we're talking about Alonso Sampson. We're just getting into the show where he was on a whaling ship. Sam has a book about it. It's one of
super.
And we're just going to go on from there.
Okay. Well, do you have your costume ready for Halloween?
Yeah. You can't see me. I have my costume on. I got my once-a-year haircut.
Oh, which way are you parting it?
Now I look like Uncle Fester.
Oh, are you parting it like you usually do from front
yeah,
to back?
I part it right down the chin. I even shaved, so I can't do that.
Oh, boy. Well, listen, I just want to say good morning to all our viewers at Access 5, and, of course, Tuesday at 1 o'clock on WRFA 107.9, low power to the people in Jamestown, Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. And I'll be back next week. So thank you, Randy, for covering for me. And Sam, have an enjoyable show. I know Randy's got lots of questions for you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Doc, you have a safe re-entry. I hear it's pretty rough coming back into the atmosphere.
I'm well protected.
You're well protected. Did anybody go up into space with you?
That's all top secret. You know that. I can't explain all that.
If you're on a shuttle, that holds like 7 people. So I wonder who you took with. You'll have to let us know next week. Okay, Doc, have a great day.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, see ya. Yeah, photoshopping Doc and me.
Oh, yeah.
So where were we?
I don't know.
We were
We were talking about where these gentlemen, these sailors went on their voyages, and I think there's an image that you might have where it shows them right near an iceberg.
Jeff, do you have that image of the iceberg and the sailors?
They were in the Arctic regions a lot during the summertime, and then they would have to basically escape before the seas iced over near the Bering Straits in the fall. And I try to think of what it must have been like, working. They would have to go out in these small chase boats to actually harpoon the whales, and sometimes they would be completely out of sight of the mothership. And they only knew, well, it's over that way somewhere, It could be a situation where they could be out in these little chase boats for days sometimes. There's a photo of what they call a Nantucket sleigh ride, which is when a whale would surface right underneath the boat, and the boat would basically slide one way or the other right off of the whale's back. And very dangerous situation, obviously, and they many sailors were killed that way. Just one flip of their tail, it could destroy those boats and send everybody into the water.
I did get to see humpbacks in Hawaii when I was scuba diving, but there's such a legal distance, you can't get close, but just to see them jumping, I would not want to be in a small boat or even scuba diving and have one of them buggers come by.
Yeah, that's something I always would like to have done in my diving days. You talk about Hawaii, I find it fascinating that they would be in the Arctic regions one day, and then a few weeks later they would be in Hawaii, because Hawaii was kind of the base of operations in the Pacific. A lot of whaling ships would come and go from Hawaii.
Is that because of the migration?
Well, I think it was just kind of a convenient place to jump off from, so to speak, and go east or west chasing the whales. They couldn't really hunt whales in deep water because the whales could submerge too far. So they would have to go to various islands and shorelines and hunt them there because they couldn't dive as deeply there. And once they fastened onto them with a harpoon, they only had so much line.
Yeah.
So and they could get dragged for miles.
I guess one question about that. I mean, how big is the boat, and then how many people?
Oh, they're only
would be
about
on 'em?
they're only about 20 feet long.
20 feet.
Yeah, not a very large craft at all. And they had to keep line and harpoons and food and water and they were basically stuck out in those boats sometimes for days. And then if they got a whale, they had to row back to the mothership with this whale attached to them. What they would do is they would cut a small hole in the tail, run a line through that, and they would drag it backwards basically, because that way there wasn't quite as much resistance. And then once they got it back to the ship, then they had to spend a few days cutting it up and rendering the oil down, put it in barrels and casks, and then maybe they could get a little rest.
Yeah. Wow.
It was a long, difficult process. There's a lot of. It's not a very. These days, something like that would be, although the Japanese still do it, it was a rather messy process, to say the least. And it's a fascinating history. And it really, the whole whaling oil industry was something that it really contributed a lot to our economy, and no one likes the thought of killing whales, but it was a different time. It really was back then.
Look at whales now; they can't even have them at SeaWorld anymore.
Right.
Shows. It's like they were smart. I mean,
yeah, they are very, very intelligent
very
creatures.
Smart. They're just cool. But
the way I got going on this little project was after I got a hold of this book, and that was quite a long time ago. I read it twice right away because it was just so interesting. Mr. Sampson is very descriptive in talking about the various lands that he visited, and as you might imagine, the whole process of whaling he describes in great detail. But when he's talking about visiting an island here or there, or going inland on the coast of Mexico or the coast of Africa, it could be anywhere really, he describes the land and the people and the flowers, and they were always looking for food. Whenever they would go to a particular island, they knew what sort of things grew there and what was available. And they would always go to these islands and stock up until they needed to stop again at another island somewhere. Like I said, whaling voyages could last 3 or 4 years. It was not unheard of. And they were basically, they couldn't say, "Oh, I want to get off now." They had
get off.
There was one voyage where they were in Hawaii, and they were supposed to be going home, and they found that another ship had been sent from New Bedford, which is where almost all the whaling voyages went out from. Another ship had been sent from New Bedford with supplies for them, so they had to stay another year, and they didn't know that until that ship got there, and that's when they found out they were basically stuck for another year. Some sailors would desert, but they were almost always recaptured. There were actually people on these various islands who made their money by recapturing sailors. And sometimes, the ships weren't really, it's not like they pulled up to a dock. they had to drop anchor out in the bay, so the guys couldn't just leave the ship.
Yeah.
If they did jump in, you know, they could possibly be eaten by sharks, which happened. So they could only leave in shifts. I don't think the captain ever wanted to have the ship undermanned, so he would only send a few people in at any one time for their liberty.
It's just amazing.
And he talks about some of the wild escapades that these sailors and troubles they would get into because, you know, they were stuck on these boats for long periods of time, working very hard, and then they'd go out on some island for a little liberty, and they just would run wild. They'd get drunk, do all sorts of stupid things, and he talked about a couple of times when he got into a little bit of trouble. Eventually, he had enough of whaling after several years and many close calls. There were a number of times when he nearly lost his life. His chase boat they were in the Arctic, and the boat was destroyed by a whale, and he was in the water for several hours before they finally got him out, and he said, "I was more dead than alive," and it took him a long time to recover from that. And he almost, their ship was right next to an iceberg one time, and as soon as they pulled away, the iceberg rolled over, and they would have been crushed, you know, if they had stayed there another several minutes. Now there's our little picture, and they would be in among all these icebergs hunting for whales. I can't imagine, you know, being out in those little chase boats in that kind of water. And another thing that's amazing to me is that they would have a boat steerer, and he basically was the one who would direct the men and tell them, you know, as most of the other guys were rowing these boats, and they were facing away from the whales. So people who were rowing never would see what they were coming up on. They just had to listen to the boat steer and say, you know, go this way, go that way. And a whale could surface right behind them, and they wouldn't even know it. Yeah, it was. I can't imagine doing that sort of thing. And then eventually he decided he had enough of whaling. So he took a job, on his last whaling voyage. They were off the Australian coast, and he wasn't a part of it, but there was a mutiny. Several disgruntled sailors killed the captain, and the second mate shot them and threw their bodies overboard, and they said, "We're taking over the ship," and the ship actually was on fire because one of the bullets had caused a little fire. Alonso had been sleeping. This was Christmas Day, early 1850s. I can't remember the exact date. I can't believe I left my notes at home. But this mutiny, the guys took over the ship, and they forced Alonso to help put the fire out first, and then, which they did, and then they sailed toward Australia, and they got into two of the chase boats, and they forced Alonso and another gentleman named Brooks to go with them, and Alonso rowed the boat towards shore, and then he decided to kind of make a little break for it. The leader of the mutineers was in the other chase boat, and Alonso made for shore, and it was rough. There was some heavy surf, but they made it to shore. The ringleader of the mutineers, he decided he wasn't going to chance it, so he went northeast, and Alonso was safe on shore with his friend Brooks and then two others who were part of the mutiny. Well, they didn't realize it, but they were in a stretch of desert there, and they had to spend several days walking along the shore with no water, no food, and after several days they made it more dead than alive to a small stream, and they went upstream, and some Australian Aborigines took them prisoner. But they did give them some food and water, and he said, I think they were fattening us up because they wanted to consume them. So they were their prisoners, and they stayed there several days. And one evening, after they sort of gained their trust a little bit, they escaped and went upstream farther, got to another settlement of Aborigines who were a little more friendly, and one of them promised to take them to a settlement. And they went to they made it to a farmer's home, and stayed there for 4 days, I believe. And then they decided, well, we better find some employment somewhere. So they went to they were on their way to a mine to try to get some work in a mine, and they were arrested by the police, who had been alerted. The people who were left on the ship went into port at Sydney and said there was a mutiny and all these guys got away, and so Alonso was arrested along with the actual mutineers, and he was put in jail. It was a very difficult time for him, and it took almost 8 months, close to a year, before they were actually sent back to the United States on the ship, the whaling ship that they had gone out on. They made jail cells on the deck for all these men, and they had to basically stay in these cells all the way back to the States. And they were put on trial in Boston, and this was about a year after the incident. And he was exonerated because he really had nothing to do with the mutiny, but it took quite a toll on his health. So at that point he decided, well, that's enough whaling for me. And he said, I'm going to go to, he had always wanted to go to California and work in the mines. And so he finally, after a number of tries, made it to California and started working in a mine, but a very unfortunate thing happened. He got some tainted mine water in his eyes, and it blinded him. Oh, and it was sort of temporary, but then it got worse, and he was completely blind. He went to a doctor who he said finished the job, basically. And so he was blind, and he had to depend on a couple of relatives who were living in California to stay there. But then the man who owned the property died, and so his widow and Alonso went back to Cattaraugus County. And at this point, he's only about 35 years old. And he's sitting in his relative's home in Cattaraugus County, and he doesn't know what he's going to do. You know, he has no means of support for himself, and he can't see anything. So some friends said, well, why don't you write a book about your adventures? And so a writer, I believe from the Buffalo area, came and helped him write this book. He said that he had his own logbook that he kept. So the incidents that he describes in here are pretty much correct. And I started doing research on his life, and to see if I could verify some of the things that were in this book. Mm-hmm. And everything pretty well checks out, other than a couple of items, one of which is there's a little description of them when they got together with another ship and killed a sea serpent, as they call it. But that story is pretty much bogus because well, the time period that he did it, that he says he did it, does not match with the records. And it was a popular story at the time, and I'm sure his publisher said, "Oh, we got to get this story in." And you know, and at the beginning of that chapter, he says, you can believe this if you want to or not. So I think that pretty much gives you a hint that he really didn't have anything to do with that little sea serpent thing. But it was it's at the very end of the book. This is 1867. Like I said, he's 35, right in that area. He talks about how he just felt so helpless because he can't do anything and he has to depend on the charity of friends and neighbors, and he didn't know what was going to happen with the rest of his life. And that's how the book ends. And it just drove me crazy not knowing what happened to him. Oh. So I started doing some research, and I found out eventually where he was buried, and when I found his tombstone, it said 1901. He was born in 1831, which is in a little bit of dispute, but it's close to that time period. But anyway, it said he died in 1901, and eventually I found his obituary, which was just like a 2-line thing in the newspaper. But from that, we've tried to do research. We found his enlistment papers and his discharge papers, and the records of a number of his whaling voyages are actually, the logbooks are still in existence in the New Bedford Historical Museums. And it's fascinating to look through page by page where they were at any one particular time, and it pretty well fits what he says in the book as far as where they were, when they were there, what they were doing, fits the logbook pretty well. So it was nice to find out what happened to him. Yeah. He lived like another 35 years after he was blinded, and then he died back where he was born, and I'm sure that wasn't where he wanted to be.
Yeah, really.
He always had a sense of wanting a little adventure.
And he had it, I'll tell you.
He had a lifetime in the space of about 3 or 4 years. So I put together a little program. I have about 100 pictures that I show, and I have a little script that I read to narrate along with the pictures. I've done it for several local historical societies. It was a thrill for me to go up to the town of Ashford, to his hometown, and I gave the program up there. His mother's name was Bond, and there's a Bond Road there, and there are still a few people with the name of Bond living in that area. I hope to talk to them a little bit here soon.
You were talking possibly wanting to rewrite the book?
Oh yeah. I'm going to try to republish this book along with the research that we've done that'll, so you can read the book just as reading any other book, but alongside the narration of the book will be our notes as to this is true, this is not true. Here's a few more details about this incident, and so it would sort of update his story. I think most anyone would really enjoy it.
That sounds interesting.
It's a fantastic story. It's amazing he lived through everything that he did.
That's just scary.
and it's so unfortunate that he had to live half of his life totally blind. The very end of the book, it almost puts you in tears, because he talks about seeing the things that he used to see, the northern lights, the constellations, and that's the last picture of my narration, showing some northern lights. And he talked a lot about some of the wonders he had been able to see. I love the northern lights. I've only seen them a few times in my life, and they're beautiful. They're quite beautiful.
So Sam, switching subjects now, we got about 9 minutes.
Okay.
You brought in, you scuba dive?
Yes.
And you brought in some interesting stuff.
I was just in the lake about a week ago, not very deep, but I was asked to go check a certain area to see what was there. And It was weeds, and more weeds.
Really?
It was in a shallow area,
You've never done saltwater? Or have you done it since I
I've been in saltwater, but not with scuba gear,
scuba
actually.
gear,
I mean,
yeah.
I've been diving over 30 years, and I think this area is freshwater, shipwrecks, the ecology of Lake Chautauqua and Lake Erie is fascinating to me. I don't feel like I'm missing anything by not seeing the reefs and the pretty fish and stuff like that. I'm sure that's a wonderful thing, but I don't feel the need or the urge to go anywhere other than home.
So you have some stuff here, bottles and
Yeah,
stuff.
just a couple of items I brought with me.
You got one that's really interesting.
Yeah, this one here, it says Biochemical natural mineral water. Not a very fancy bottle or anything, but it was down at the bottom, it says Jamestown, New York. And it was a company, these bottles aren't particularly rare, but I have a number of them and I'm always happy to find them. The spring where they got this water from was somewhere near where the clay pond is now, over in the Falconer area,
Is it on,
near the old
the
carborundum. I'm not sure where it was, but that's where they got the water from.
Falconer Frewsburg Road used to have a spring water.
Yeah, that might have been the spot.
We used to get that as kids there. We'd go live down there.
This little ceramic jug would have had a handle, and it probably held ink.
Where'd you find that?
In the Chautauqua River.
I
really like diving. I really like diving in the Chautauqua. There's always things you can find there. One of the items that I found, which
this is what's really interesting,
is I think a pretty interesting item. Doesn't look like much, but it I believe is part of a conveyor belt system, and these are wood, and then there's a stainless steel pin right here set at an angle. This would have been part of a conveyor belt for ice that would be taken from the river and put in the ice houses. And not sure how it ran, but this would have been quite a bit longer, but this was all worn out. And there's several rolls of this stuff in the Chautauqua River, not far from from the 3rd Street Bridge.
We have a phone call. Good morning, caller.
Well, good morning. This is Linda Spalding.
Hey, Linda, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm on an adventure around the world.
Oh, this is, excuse me, absolutely fascinating.
Except I usually went by airplane. Airplanes, buses and boats, but never a whaling ship.
The stories of marine life and sea travel is phenomenal. Oh, this is just an absolutely fascinating show. Thank you very much.
Yes. I could do 100 shows with Sam. We wouldn't even cover half the subjects, but so how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. And Halloween is coming up. I see your trick or treat sign and your skeleton.
Yeah, we got our skeletons. We got our spider we dropped on dock a few years ago, and a couple rats here, and we got a hand.
Oh, that's good. That's great. Well, I wanted to also mention that we're having our computer training graduation ceremony on Thursday, November 2nd at 1 p.m. at the Brockton and Hira Library, and our graduates are going to be recognized, and we're going to have a little celebration.
Oh, great. They deserve it.
They certainly do. And so, and then we also have computer training at the Westfield Patterson Library and at the Only in One Stop. So there's also jobs that are available that I'm trying to match people up. They should call our office. The number is 753-4471 at the Chautauqua County Office for the Aging.
And it's on the screen right there for us.
Yes, it is. Well, you have a great day, a wonderful weekend, and thank you for a terrific show.
Thank you for calling, Linda.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, Sam, so we were talking about your ice
I'm going to be bringing up another portion of these rolls of conveyor belts, and
How deep are stuff like that?
Oh,
It
a few feet deep is all. The Chautauqua River is not very deep, other than right in the middle. There's a bit of a channel.
Got a real current to it, or
in spots. But mostly it's manageable. A lot of times when I'm diving, what I do is I actually carry a small boat anchor with me, and I have it on a line and a little lanyard, basically. And when I want to stop, if I'm drifting along, I just throw the anchor down, and it catches onto something, and then I can stay in one spot without having to fight the current. It gets
cool.
very tiring to try to fight the current. So that's one of our little tricks. There's a lot of little tricks when it comes to diving.
Pretty much everything in the lake ends up going down the Chautauqua.
Right.
It's got to be.
And there's stuff, interesting things in the lake and in the river.
Boom! Something you found one time?
Yeah, I did find a World War I mortar shell and it was live, and the hazmat team took it away from me. But I know we're short of time. Let me just show you a couple things here.
These are interesting.
These are portions of a railroad lantern, and you see this one here is amber. This one is blue, but I've put a little piece of yellow paper behind it because when these lanterns would be lit, they would be lit by a kerosene flame, which burns basically yellow. And so the conductor of the train who would be seeing this as they approach, it would show as a green color, not as a blue one. It would have more of a green color, so that would mean you're okay to keep going. The amber one would burn and look red with that flame in behind it. So it would either be green or red, and that's how the engineer would know whether they could keep going or not.
We have just over a minute left. You had a couple big photos there.
Yeah, here's
this
one.
Is where Sam and I got to know each other. Justin, can you show this?
Here's one of the. It's a rather odd-looking picture, but I love it. I took it in the winter. 1999. The ship had just been sunk up in Buffalo, and that's a train car to the right there, and it's up against a pier about 14 feet high, and it's down in the ice.
And this is the Sea Lion ship.
That's the mast of the Sea Lion just showing up above the ice there. It was not a pleasant sight for me to see it like that, but luckily there wasn't too much damage, and
right now
the story excuse me, the story is still doesn't have that happy ending yet.
No, not yet, but we're working.
We're trying to get it repaired, and it's in Albany right now, and they've done some work on it, and they're hopefully going to get it done in the next few years. It's a very expensive process.
Oh man!
And they're trying hard to raise money. This is a group from Virginia that wants to get it all restored, and we're encouraging them, and we're actually a part of that process a little bit.
We're hoping. It took quite a while to deal with them. Well, thanks for coming, Sam. We didn't get nowhere.
Once again, we just got started.
We need like a 10-hour show. Well, thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for watching Chautauqua Sunrise. I'd like to thank Justin on camera, Chris and Jeff out in the control room, and definitely Doc. Have a safe re-entry into Earth. I know you're up there and somewhere floating around in outer space. And definitely want to thank Sam Genco.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Yep.